Thanks everyone for joining us tonight to talk about citizen science and ways that you can get involved and take action for the environment. So we've got 4 wonderful and passionate citizen scientists with us tonight that are going to share their experiences, and I will introduce them to you in a moment. I'll just do a little bit of housekeeping by way of introduction, and I've got some slides to share with you as well. So I'll share my screen. Okay, so hopefully you're seeing my screen now. Let's keep moving. So I would just like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the country, and I'm guessing that you're all coming to us tonight from different traditional lands. Tonight I'm on the country of the Wurundjeri people, and I would like to pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. And feel free to pop in the chat where the traditional owners of the country from where you're coming from joining us tonight. So just a few little housekeeping things before we get started. So everyone's microphones are turned off, and that's really just to minimise any background noise so that we can all hear nice and clearly. I have got there to put your cameras on, but I think it's probably better because there's so many of you tonight if we have the cameras off, just so that you'll be able to see the presenters better that way. And we do hope, we've got a really packed schedule tonight, but we hope to have a little bit of time at the end to answer some questions. So I'll get you to pop those into the chat. And if we do run out of time tonight, I will get back to you and follow up with you some of your questions after the event. So just be aware that this event is being recorded and will be stored on the Melbourne Water website after the event. Okay, so what is citizen science? That's what we're all here to talk about today. It's about people gathering together with guidance to find out more about the local environment, and generally speaking, looking at answering specific questions around the environment. So we'll bring up with lots of examples tonight of ways in which citizen science works, but it's really about getting together with like-minded people and having fun and probably learning some new skills along the way as well. You don't really need to have a background in science or technical skills to take part, and generally you will be trained by the scientists that are running the program, and that's about ensuring the quality of the data that you collect. So really it's just about bringing your curiosity to the experience. So the idea is to work together with the community to gather data, which gives a much more comprehensive picture of the environment, and this information is then often used to guide management of the environment or look after that species or protect that species in some way. So with Melbourne Water, there's a lot of different ways that you can become involved in citizen science. So we've got a number of different programs that you may heard of before in the past that come under the Water Watch umbrella, including water quality monitoring and water bug monitoring. I'm the, and I should have introduced myself at the start, I'm the Water Watch coordinator for the Frog Census program. So that's where my particular interest lies. So the Frog Census program is a long-running program that began in 2001 and has collected a huge database of information about the abundance and distribution of frogs in the Melbourne area. So that's helping to guide the management of waterways to protect those species. and in particular focusing on vulnerable and endangered species. So one of the, I don't want to talk for too long, but I was just going to give you a quick example of how citizen science can have an impact, because I think it's always good to understand how this data is used and how it influences management. So there was a particular group of frog census volunteers that were monitoring, in particular, southern toadlet populations, and they'd been working since 2009. And in 2017, they noticed a decline in the number of male frogs calling. And this discovery led to Melbourne Water taking action to look into this issue and try and find out what was causing the seeming population decline. So what happened was that Melbourne Water commissioned some consultants to undertake some more detailed population surveys and to assess known habitat sites to see whether there were population declines in other locations. So all of this work has led to the development of management plans at a number of sites, and looking at ways of enhancing the habitat for this species. And this work is ongoing to this day. So the data that citizen scientists are collecting is actually influencing management, and is important to fill the gaps, the knowledge gaps around the presence of and the abundance of all sorts of animals, including platypus as well. Okay, so I'm now going to introduce our wonderful panel, and we can get started with hearing about their experiences in citizen science. So in no particular order, I'll start with Amy Grigorovich. She volunteers with the Friends of the Helmeted Honeyeater, and they are a group that are working to protect Victoria's critically endangered bird emblem. Her current role focuses on facilitating citizen science events for young people aged 18 to 30, thereabouts. And she has also actively used the frog census in the past in other volunteering roles. So our next panel member is Danielle Wallace. She is a PhD candidate at the University of Melbourne, and she's researching tree frog species and the chytrid fungus. She can put a different lens on the citizen science experience because she can help to make us mindful of some of the potential negative impacts of getting out in the environment, and the importance of being mindful of potential negative impacts, and really how to be a good citizen scientist. Also joining us tonight, we've got Hansi Wenger. He coordinates the Dangeen Citizen Science crew at Devil Bend Nature Features Reserve, which is down on the Mornington Peninsula. And it's a bit of a biodiversity hotspot. One of the projects that this team is working on is to protect a significant population of southern toadlets. And this is a vulnerable species. I was lucky to go down there recently and have a look, and the work they're doing down there is amazing. Finally, we've also got Lily Setnick joining us tonight, and she is a volunteer project coordinator with the Citizen Science crew at Dangeen. So she's been part of the group since 2022, but started volunteering more regularly during a gap year last year. And she's currently studying a Bachelor of Agriculture. So I'm sure she's going to tell us about the fun she's having in citizen science. So what we might do now is I'll hand over to Amy and give her a chance to tell you about what she's getting up to. Thanks, Amy, and I'll stop
Jane. I'm
sharing.
hoping you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Perfect, thanks. Hi, everybody. So as Jane mentioned, my name's Amy. I live and work on Boonwurrung and Wurundjeri country out here in southeast Melbourne. I work in local government in the climate action space, and I spend my spare time volunteering with the Friends of the Helmeted Honeyeater. The group was formed about 35 years ago now, when the population of the helmeted honeyeater, which is a small black and yellow bird that is Victoria's bird emblem, reached critical levels of only about 50 species left in the wild. So since then, the group's worked tirelessly, and there's been hundreds of volunteers to protect what is now called the Yellingbo Nature Conservation Area, which is the only ruminant habitat that remains in the world for the helmeted honeyeater. And although the species has kind of bolstered its population slightly in size since then, unfortunately still remains critically endangered and on the brink of extinction, and of course highlights the importance of volunteer work in that space. So our group do a range of environmental activities to support local conservation efforts in Yellingbo and surrounds. But our citizen science program, which is of relevance to tonight, is really exciting. So the program is designed to offer opportunities for all sorts of volunteers to explore the Yellingbo Nature Conservation Area and contribute to the knowledge base of what we know exists and the diversity that exists in the region. And of course, the group being founded around a beautiful bird, there's a lot of knowledge around the historical data of bird species present. But more recently, we've gone kind of above and beyond just observing bird species to include flora and fungi and other animals such as mammals and, of course, our friendly frog friends. So as Jane mentioned, a part of my specific involvement with the Friends group has come as a unfortunate, I guess, result of graduating at the end of COVID. So I was studying environmental science at the that time in point, and graduated with a degree, but not a lot of fieldwork experience because of the lockdown. So I was eagerly looking for volunteer opportunities that would get me back outdoors, gaining those kind of meaningful fieldwork skills that would hopefully look good on a resume and start building those social connections. So with the help of some other volunteers at the Friends group and a couple of staff members, we started our youth reference group, which specifically organises citizen science opportunities for young people aged between 18 and 30-ish, depending on who's interested. And those opportunities are designed in a way to kind of form a two-way relationship. So we're really conscious that young people are immensely busy and often have competing demands when it comes to studying and working and trying to get volunteer their time on things that they're passionate about. So we really prioritise offering flexible kind of volunteering opportunities that allow people to come and go as their availability changes, and is informed by the sort of skill sets our participants would like to gain whilst dedicating their spare time to our conservation efforts. So we've been running a few of these programs for a few years now, and of course we see and observe something different in what is a very beautiful and special place in Yellingbo each time we're out and about, which is lovely. So for an example of what we get up to, a couple of weeks ago, we headed out into the reserve on a Sunday evening to conduct a twilight frog survey. So we used citizen science apps like Frog Census to capture the calls of the frogs we were hearing at the time at beautiful sunset on a nice warm evening. And then once the sun dipped, we spent an hour or two walking very slowly and trying not to step on anything underneath our boots down the tracks, and spotted a few frogs physically, and we're all taking photos, which was very exciting. And those photos got uploaded to iNaturalist, both to help us identify what we were looking at. None of us are frog experts, but we're all very excited. And to also contribute to that longer term knowledge base of what's present within the reserve beyond the bird species that our Friends group is based around. And Jane asked us what one of the highlights of kind of our involvement in citizen science has been so far. So I wanted to talk about one specific frog that we have found. So one of the first frog surveys we conducted was a couple of years ago when James Fraser from Melbourne Water had come out to give us a 101 kind of frog monitoring session and teach us all about how we could conduct citizen science in an appropriate way for Yellingbo. And we hadn't seen anything all day, and we were kind of heading out to have lunch, and we're a bit frustrated that we had been talking about these beautiful frogs but hadn't seen anything. And all of a sudden, a member of the youth reference group turned around and spotted multiple eastern dwarf tree frogs, which are often known as the banana box frogs, and are definitely not meant to be in Yellingbo. So they are known for being transported down from tropical regions in fruit boxes or on horticultural equipment. And we had some anecdotal evidence that they might have been found in Yellingbo, but no hard records. So we went from seeing no frogs to seeing a lot of frogs that weren't meant to be in Yellingbo, which was exciting, but also a bit daunting around what we had just found. But yeah, was really keen to pop that on Frog Census and get a recording of what we had found. And for the seasons following, we've kept an eye out for it to see if it would survive the really cold winters in Yellingbo, and hopefully contribute data that would help researchers understand what the potential impacts of its presence could be on native frog species long term. So yeah, I guess that's a bit about me. Happy to answer any questions once we go around. But overall, I'd just say that I kind of joined the volunteer group and started doing citizen science to get those fieldwork skills and volunteer my time. But yeah, truly stayed because of the amazing people that you meet along the way, and would highly recommend to anyone who's on the call tonight thinking about doing the same. So yeah, that's me, and I'll hand back to you, Jane.
Thanks, Amy. That was fantastic, especially the frog bit got me interested. Okay, Hansie, could you share with us now, please? Oh, except you're on mute. Hang on a minute. Can we unmute you? I'll just check it's not my end.
Is that working?
That's better. Beautiful.
That's working. Okay. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Hi, everyone. As Jane said, my name's Hansie Wegner. I am very fortunate to be the field officer and I suppose team leader for the citizen science crew down here on the beautiful Mornington Peninsula. We're mostly, well, all our focus is mostly at Devil Bend Natural Features Reserve, which is 1,005 hectare property with a diverse range of habitats, fauna and flora. We have one of the largest populations of freshwater turtles that come ashore there that we sort of over the last few years have discovered, you know, where they're nesting and what's impacting them and all those sorts of things. But as a whole, we actually have a diverse range of projects at the reserve, and they range from the turtles to the southern toadlet that we're currently looking after, to kangaroo counts, and most of those, I suppose, from a citizen science perspective, most of our projects have a real focus. More so. So, for instance, the Southern Toadlet program that we started, for us, I suppose we always start off with, you know, is the species still in the reserve? If it is, what is, you know, where is it, and what is potentially impacting it? And then from there we can. The journey. So, for instance, the Southern Toadlets we started in 2019. We're now 2024, and the journey to get from finding the first couple of toadlets to now knowing that we've got of last year's count 160 males calling in 3 key areas, and also knowing that in those 3 key areas there's different things that can impact them. And, you know, working in partnership with Melbourne Water and Parks Victoria, with the knowledge and the observations that we've collected, it's allowing us to make real change for the species in the park. So it not only continues to be there, but thrives and has the opportunity to expand as well. One of the other projects that we are currently working on is the turtles that I mentioned. And most people aren't aware that the predation on turtles by foxes is around 98%. And we actually discovered that back in 2018. And again, it was a simple project where we noticed some turtle nests dug up, and we made the decision to sort of start monitoring what's happening. How many turtles have we got? You know, what does a turtle's nest look like? Where are they nesting? We had so many questions that needed answering, and but we over the years we were able to not only work out exactly where they're nesting and all the different sites that they prefer, but we've also been able to now implement a program to protect those nests from predatory foxes. Also, in our original surveys of working out where these turtles are nesting, and a little bit like sea turtles, I mean, it's just an observation, but at a recent conference, it seems true that they also have a preferred spot they'll come back to year after year. You know, we've got one in particular spot in this little clearing amongst some pine trees, and we've got 4 or 5 turtles that will make that way to that site every year. Knowing those sorts of patterns that these turtles and things are doing helps us with you know, as you know, volunteer time's precious, and we've been able to sort of narrow down our efforts over a 5-week period, where we can every year get around 40 turtle nests protected from predatory foxes. And within those sites where we've noticed they're nesting, we also noticed that there's, you know, other things like woody weeds that are taking over, so we can then focus our efforts on where we can do the most good and clear away some, you know, woody weeds and things, so those turtle nesting sites become or stay productive, and things like that. And the same with our southern toadlets. In the 3 areas that we've discovered them over the last few years, as I was saying, they've all got each 3 very unique requirements. So, for instance, the core population, really the only threats to those is sort of people, you know, us people walking through the area, or if the water coming into the reserve was depleted, you know, so if surrounding farms or something like that decided to put in big dams and things like that, that could seriously threaten our southern toadlet population. But in 2 other locations where we're working with Melbourne Water, you know, one of the areas it's a little bit more involved, and this is where you get sort of working in partnership with Melbourne Water and consultants and people that know a lot more than you. We recently just had a fantastic meeting down there where we all discussed, you know, how we could improve the hydrology in one of the old creek lines so that the population there has a chance to thrive and prosper. And then we've also got a population in one of our, in the catchment drain, which is sort of a diversion culvert, which was quite denuded. And over the last few years, we've been looking at ways, so as the toadlets expand, we can create suitable habitat in that culvert or in that catchment drain along the way. Yeah, so I think that's, I'll hand back to you, Jane. Yeah.
Thanks, Hansie. Sounds like you've got a lifetime's work there in front of you.
Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. Really interesting to hear about the turtles and predation by foxes. That's really concerning.
Yeah, look, it is. So it's around 270 female turtles within a 5-week period we have come ashore and nested at Devil Bend. And I don't know anywhere else in the whole district that, you know, that's going on. So it makes it pretty special. So when you add to that, you know, the 180 bird species and the 4 species of snake and other reptiles, and you know, it's a very, very special place. And yeah, we're very lucky to have it, and I feel really fortunate to be able to care for it and care for it how we have over the years with some absolutely amazing volunteers from all different spectrums of life. And I just wanted to pick up on what you said earlier, Jane, was I think you really, when you just sort of talked about citizen science, what it is, you really described it really well. And I know up the top here it's got expert connections, but I do really agree with you that it's you don't need to be an expert. You just need to sort of have a passion. And it's a sort of a learning, it's a journey of learning and discovering together. Yeah.
Oh, that's a wonderful description. Thanks, Hansi. Now, let's see, Lily might have another perspective that she can add to your experience. Thanks, Lily.
Hello, I'm Lily. I have been volunteering with the Devil Bend group since, I think it was like very late 2022. There was kind of a bit of a weird way that I eventually got to volunteering there. Like ever since I was really young, weeds really annoyed me, but I didn't know that there was like a way that you could sort of tackle them. I've been told by my mum, who's really environmental, that like sweet potassium was a massive problem. And I remember sitting in the car as a kid, looking out the window, being like, how much bloody sweet potassium is there? This is awful. Who's doing anything about this? And then once I got to about, I think it was about year 11, I'm like, oh, maybe I should start doing something about it. So I marched myself into the Parks Victoria office after school one day, and I'm like, how on earth do I volunteer and start making a difference about the amount of bloody sweet potassium everywhere? And they put me onto Parts Connect. I got onto my laptop, looked through it, and the first thing that came up was the citizen science crew at Dangian. And I'm like, that sounds great. Signed myself up, got my mum to drive me up there. And I think the second I got there, I was hooked. Like my first activity that I did was removing Spanish heath, which is a very, very annoying plant that looks a lot like the common heath, but it sort of goes all around the shoreline of Devil Bend. And when you do have that amount of weeds there, the poor little turtles, they come up, they're ready to nest, and where are they going to go? There's too much low Spanish heath everywhere. So, yeah, I went there, we moved a whole bunch of Spanish heath, and yeah, the people I met there, especially how enthusiastic Hansi is about the reserve, and just Devil Bend has something really special about it. You go there and you just want to protect it. And after that point, I'm just like, I'm just going to keep doing this. Last year, as mentioned, I took a gap year after finishing high school. So I was able to spend a lot more time actually down at Devil Bend volunteering. We do like so many different activities. So it's really whatever you're into, there's probably something that we're doing that will be related to that. If you're into kangaroos, we do kangaroo surveying in the afternoon sometimes. Covering turtle nests is always a big one in November. Go around like 3 times a week and try and find your turtle nests. Have not found one personally yet that has not been destroyed and put a little marker on it, but one day we'll get there. And my favourite thing is removing weeds from habitat. My schedule's recently changed as I've started my Bachelor of Agriculture, but Hansi offered for me to become the project coordinator so I could take on more of an online role. And that worked a lot better with my schedule because it means I can be up here in Melbourne, putting some things up on Parts Connect, helping other people find the group just as I found it a few years ago. And it means I can still contribute, but then have people like Hansi and the people who are down at Devil Bend actually doing the stuff on the ground, which is a really great thing. We've also been able to collaborate with other groups because we have quite a few people that volunteer with us, where you can have some of us come over to another group like the Coonya Grassy Bowl Project, meet a whole bunch of other fantastic people who are doing the same sort of thing, but down in Rye. And yeah, it's just amazing being able to meet other people doing that sort of thing. It's really hard to explain exactly what our project's achieved. Like each thing that you do like has the impact. Obviously you're removing the weeds, there's less weeds, then those animals that are endangered and use that habitat can use it better because they have more of the indigenous plants that they rely on. So if you're removing weeds from areas that southern toadlets live in, it's a better area for them to be in because there's less invasive weeds that are destroying their habitat. But then that has like a ripple effect that then it's not only the southern toadlets that use that area. You've got all the birds that live in the reserve, the reptiles, the insects. The entire ecosystem becomes better from your small action. And I think that's a massive part of citizen science, that you feel that, yes, I'm doing a small thing, but you never see the end impact. Like it just sort of continues to build and it just makes the world better. And you're never going to know what it's truly done, but you know that you've made the world a better place. Just going there for that afternoon, doing a few hours, it's going to have a long-lasting impact. And I think there's something really beautiful about doing citizen science. Every time I head down to the reserve and you see something that you've done before, like I see areas that we've removed weeds from, and it sort of like motivates you again. It's like a little burst of motivation every time you see it, and you just kind of want to keep going and doing more in that same area. I think my greatest moment as a citizen scientist, I think I've got to say that there was an area that I was removing polygala from in a stand of mooners at 16th Beach. I went away for a holiday for like 6 weeks, and when I came back, the amount of Indigenous plants that I didn't even know were in the seed bank, they all just started popping up, and there was a whole bunch of rare plants that people didn't even think were in the area. So love creep is an example that you just don't see it really in alkaline soils. It's super rare, but you just kept walking around the site and you're like, oh, there's a bit there, there's a bit there. It was fantastic because those plants are going to grow up and provide amazing habitat for the animals that do still live in that area. I think we also found bottle daisies, like Warrilda wattles, and even native buttercups. And I think it definitely was, you know, topped it off. It was fantastic. Yeah.
Thanks, Lily, for sharing that. Your passion is quite infectious, and I think you're making a great observation too there about it being a long-term, like that you might not see your impacts immediately, but it's a long-term, not necessarily a long-term commitment, but it can be a long time frame to see dramatic responses, but I think persistence really pays off, particularly where weeds are concerned. My mother always used to say, 1 year's seeds is 7 years weeds. So yeah, you've got to hang in there for the long term with weeds control, that's for sure. We might now hear from Danielle, and I'm just going to share a slide from Danielle as well. Thanks, Danielle.
Thanks, Jane. Oh, can we see it?
Can you see it?
Well, yeah, it's just not full screen.
Oh, hang on. Is that better?
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. No worries, Jane. Hey everyone, I'm Danielle Wallace. I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Melbourne. So I'm aware I'm not directly involved in the citizen science space. I won't talk to you about myself for too long, but I thought I'd kind of grab your attention with all my lovely froggy photos here. So I'm definitely championing the frogs today. So I've always been frog obsessed. So that's what's kind of led me to pursuing a career in frogs and research and in science. So I'm doing a PhD and my research is focused on the deadly disease amphibian chytrid fungus. And I'm looking at that and how it affects breeding behaviours in tree frogs in Victoria. So things like croaking or calling in male frogs, or the colours that they present when they're breeding. So I'm trying to see if infection is changing in their breeding display. And that's really exciting. I have a great time doing that. So as part of that work, I've worked behind me, you can see the background. So I've done frog work way up
right at the top of Mount Buller and Mount Hotham. So that's the summit of Mount Hotham here. So I've surveyed for critically endangered alpine tree frogs at about -6 conditions in the snow, grabbing frogs out of the pond where I'm frozen like a popsicle, but that was fantastic. To the other extreme, with my lab coat on and my lovely, beautiful blue gloves on, conducting frog experiments in the lab and seeing how infection is changing over time and how that's changing breeding colours in them. So that's my sweet little alpine tree frog, my photo on the left, and swabbing them. So tree frogs do this beautiful thing where you try and detect disease in them, kind of like a COVID swab, but you just swab them with like a cotton swab and tree frogs will hang on to it. So you get these really cute little images of them holding onto the swab, which is like my favorite thing. So before my PhD, I worked as a field ecologist in Gippsland. So I was out scurrying about in all types of habitats in East Gippsland, from the really beautiful tall montane ash forests to like the swamps where I've kind of, the air is as dense as it can be with mosquitoes. So that was a lot of fun, but I had the wonderful opportunity to survey for a lot of threatened species like powerful owls, greater gliders, long-footed potoroos, and of course, an amazing group of frogs, some of which are down here. So I had the opportunity to work with Zoos Victoria and the Arthur Riley Institute, surveying for critically endangered species like the giant burrowing frog, which is the big purple guy with the yellow spots, and the Watson's tree frog, which smell like curry when they get pissed off. So yeah, had a wonderful time working with a bunch of frogs. But yeah, excited to talk to you today about the opportunities that you can get through citizen science and how to be a responsible citizen scientist as well.
Thanks, Danielle.
Thanks, Jane.
Sounds like you have been an intrepid adventurer getting out
I've
there.
definitely got around.
Tackling the elements.
Fun.
Yeah. You did mention to me that you had used some citizen science data in your research.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about how that kind of information might help to fill gaps?
Yeah, it's really amazing. So often the first step, particularly when you're doing field research, is you'll kind of look at, for example, the Victorian Biodiversity Atlas or iNaturalist or the Atlas of Living Australia, something like that, is just to see where the observations are for the species that you're interested in. So oftentimes that's the first thing that I'll do when I'm going out into the field, for example, looking for a particular frog or heading into a new area. I'm not aware of the species that are there. And that's it's a super really powerful skill, a really valuable observation to have when you're heading out, to see if anyone's out there recorded those observations that you're looking for, or to kind of see where the gaps are in our observations. So sometimes just there's places that are more remote, or for whatever reason, people haven't done surveys, or the citizen science projects aren't as active in that area. So that's a really good way of kind of pinpointing, for example, what areas that maybe we need to get more people involved in citizen science, or try and see what species are out there, because that can often lead to range expansions of threatened species or a new species popping up that you didn't know was there before, which is super exciting. So you never know until you go out and looking for them. And like, you don't need PhD people like me doing that. Like, anyone can go out and do that and make observations. So I think that's the really exciting thing about citizen science, is you don't need like a fancy PhD to go out and do this stuff. So I think that's really important to know.
It's that sense of curiosity, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yes. And I don't think we should ever lose that. I mean, I think continuing to learn throughout your life keeps things interesting. Hansi, can you remember the first time you heard a southern toadlet calling at Devil Bend?
I can actually, yeah. I can. It was obviously back in 2019. And we've obviously did our research, and obviously they seem to like a very broad habitat, but knowing that we've got some of these old creek lines and things like that. So yeah, the first time I heard it, I couldn't believe it. And I suppose that's where the Frog Sensors app comes in handy. You've got those, that reference right there that you can play and things like that. But yeah, look, definitely, I heard the first one, and when we first discovered them, we thought we only had 4 in this little area, and it was super exciting. But you know, as I were sharing earlier, you know, over the time we've expanded out to work out, you know, I think over the last few years we've checked every nook and cranny of the reserve to see where these frogs are, and we've been very fortunate with help from students and professionals and like I said, passionate volunteers spending a huge amount of time just searching every nook and cranny. And as you know, you can go out one day and the frogs are quiet. You can go out the next day and they're making a racket, and particularly the southern toadlet, we found it was quite a narrow window, to work out where they are. But yeah, I think everyone thought we were a bit odd last year, sort of counting the frogs, but it was fun working out where they all were and that. Yeah.
And the beauty of that, the beauty of that work is that you found that you have such a significant population there of a vulnerable species, which is fantastic to know that, isn't it?
Well, it is. You're talking about sort of sharing that information, and the asset managers. So the two main primary asset managers at Devil Bend Natural Features Reserve, Park Victoria, Melbourne Water, and then to be able to sort of share that information with you guys, so better decisions can be made. And like I was saying, we can, we're currently looking at ways to let the vegetation in these catchment drains grow in a way that's suitable for the toadlets. And the same actually, Lily was talking about, actually quantifying, things we've achieved. So one of the first things, I think one of the first big things that we achieved with the turtle program when we did the original surveys, we actually discovered that there was 2 sections along the catchment drain, which is a total about, 3 kilometres in total, that the turtles like to nest. And then we obviously looked at what's impacting that, and definitely running through slashes right at nesting time isn't sort of a good idea, really, is it? So working with Melbourne Water, that we were able to change the mowing regimes, and it happened really quickly. So we're now not getting the ground scalped, and mum turtles aren't having to duck and weave from slashes passing over them. But then the other benefit that came about was the flora that was just busting to come out of the ground. We've got these beautiful sections of orchids and native grasses and all sorts of plants that are right next to the walking track. So it's not only benefited the turtles, but visitors to the reserve now at arm's length can see all these things, that they don't have to go wandering off into the reserve, and they can actually just see them at arm's length now. So it's so impressive. We're actually putting together a little guide. We're going to put together a little guide of the orchids and native plants along that section. So doing one thing for the turtles ended up having multiple benefits down the line, and we're hoping the same for the toadlets. Once we address each, when we look at each, what could be affecting the toadlets in the first location, and then a second location, the third location, and then coming up with solutions, working with professionals, and then implementing them. And even what we've implemented as volunteers, just putting a few logs in and allowing it to collect leaf litter and all those sorts of things, slowing the flow of water down in a few spots. We now know from at the start of the catchment drain, where we sort of thought we had a quite a healthy population, we now know that population has moved quite a significant distance down that catchment drain. And so we're hoping habitat efforts, we're going to see the results. So this year we're hoping to see some recruitment down in those bottom areas. Yeah,
it just shows you, doesn't it, the complexity of natural ecosystems, and we've gone in there and kind of interfered with things over hundreds of years, and now we're trying to kind of unpick some of that. I was wondering, Amy, you're working quite a bit with young people, whether you've noticed I know we hear a lot in the press about concerns of young people around climate change. Are you experiencing some of that with the people that you're working with?
Yeah, I think especially, so our program started just out of COVID, as I mentioned, with some funding from Parks Victoria, and the amount of interest we received in the first couple of days of having an EOI was insane. There was like an immense amount of interest in wanting to get out and about, both from a being in a lockdown period, but also from a climate anxiety and concern for the future that we're inheriting. So yeah, I don't think it doesn't solve that anxiety, I guess, but we get a lot of a lot of feedback, and from myself as an individual, that it does kind of ease that anxiety and makes you feel like you're contributing to something that's a bit bigger than just yourself, as Lily was saying. So most definitely. And I think you don't have to be a part of a formal volunteer program to be a citizen scientist. Like, these apps exist and you can just wander around your neighborhood and take in what you're observing. And I often do that after a busy and stressful work day, is go for a walk around my block and take some photos and record the frogs. So most definitely, it's a really rewarding thing that you can do.
Yeah, and like you say, you don't have to sign your life away to be involved and to make a difference. Yeah, fantastic. Has anyone got anything that they would like to add? I might open up the floor for a few questions just to finish off. Has anyone got anything they want to add before we take some questions? No? Okay. All right, let's see if I can unmute you all so that you can actually ask your questions rather than type them into the chat. There must be some way to unmute everyone at once, but it's not jumping out at me. So I will just ask you, if you don't mind, to type your questions into the chat while I still work on unmuting you.
While we're waiting for questions, perhaps I can talk about some ways to be a responsible citizen scientist, particularly coming from a disease, frog disease background. So the big one that I'm focused on is chytrid fungus, which is in Australia, but it's also all around the world. And it's leading to the really rapid decline of quite a huge bunch of our frog species here in Australia. So as much as we want to be out and about recording frog calls, you just have to kind of have it in the back of your head when you're doing your citizen science activities, or you're just going for a walk out in nature. So this fungus lives in the dirt and it lives in the water. So if you're going out and walking around, you can be potentially spreading the fungus on your shoes. So in a really easy way to avoid doing that and to spread the fungus to other frog populations or other habitats where it isn't before, is just cleaning your shoes after you go on a nature walk or before you go to a new site. So if you're going to multiple sites a night, if you're going on a little frog adventure, and an easy way to do that is just scrub off the dirt, maybe on the road or something where it's not going to get into the waterway. And you can use 30% bleach, you can use ethanol, you can use detergent. Anything that's going to kill the fungus is really easy to kill. But or oftentimes just before I go out, I'll give them a good spray, and then a spray with F10, which is vet grade disinfectant, but you can use ethanol, you can use bleach, anything like that. Or you can have a bath. If you've got like a Tupperware container or something, and dip your shoes in with bleach or ethanol or something before you head out, and you've done your bit. And that'll also control, I think, cinnamon fungus as well, if you're going to areas that have phytophthora. So that's a good way of kind of control multiple fungi. And as well, maybe Hansi and Lily can speak more on this, but if you find frogs, or even Amy, you said when you found frogs out and about, you can take photos, but don't try not to pick them up or move them, or particularly with like the toadlets, sometimes they can be calling from really hidden locations. And I know the urge is to go and like try and dig them up and find them, but that can be really obviously disturbing to the male or the female that the calling and like trying to breed, but also you can disturb their little nests and they have eggs in there. So try and observe them when you can, but if not, just record their calls.
Thanks for
Yeah,
that, Danielle. Yeah.
No worries.
I'm not sure if you can hear me, Jane. I was
Yes,
just
I
going to
can.
say, yeah, just to add to that, yeah, we take a lot of precautions in how we approach everything. You know, even how we sort of sometimes with our activities, you know, we've got areas around the marginal verges of the shoreline, and obviously you don't want 20 people walking through those. So it's a matter of, even sometimes if you're running an activity, we look at, you know, making sure we've got the appropriate numbers in certain areas and people are well briefed on things. For instance, the turtles. It's amazing what you can do. You know, we don't actually physically interfere with the turtles. We don't pick the turtles up. We don't interfere with the turtle nests. We simply put a little cover over the top. At the few times that we have had to do something, we've always done that with professionals that have the appropriate permits and things like that. And we always, you know, wash our feet and all those sorts of things. Yeah, so yeah.
And Hansi, I have got a question for you in the chat from Judy. She would like to know about which section of the track you're talking about with the orchids, grasses, etc. Definitely coming to volunteer in November, she says. Keep us on the mailing list. So that's Judy O'Donnell.
Yeah, so we've got there's a few sections. So one of these sections is from the dam wall parallel with Derrill Road, if you know the area, and it runs along, runs right along parallel with Derrill Road, and then hooks around to the east, which makes up part of, I believe, the Dargeen Trail at the reserve. The vegetation also where the southern toadlets are, which is down in the southern part of the reserve, which is off Hodgins Road, again is a stunning part. So we implemented some different mowing regimes there as well, because obviously as these toadlets, as their population spread, you want appropriate habitat. My understanding, the males, and once they've got their territory, they sort of live within about a 10-metre radius, so they need, you know, everything to sustain them in that little area. So if you can allow for appropriate habitat to grow, so they've got perfect feeding opportunities and things like that. But doing that for the frogs again has just made this, you know, beautiful array of plants for people to come and visit and enjoy. Yeah.
Sounds
I hope
wonderful.
I've answered that.
Yes, Judy says, awesome, thanks.
Oh, good.
Okay, has anyone else got any final questions? I'm not able to unmute you because of the way the webinar's been set up, but if you're not able to provide your question tonight, feel free to send it via email. I know it's not an immediate response, but we can follow up if there's something particular that you would like to know about. I'll just share my screen again so that I've got some contact information there for you to have a look at. So you can use that QR code on the screen to scan, and that sends you to the citizen science page on the Melbourne Water website if you're interested in finding out a little bit more about the citizen science programs run by Melbourne Water. Okay, I'm just calling on last questions.
I'm not sure if you can hear me, Jane. I was going to say that on our website, we've actually got a little on the front page where people can actually subscribe to upcoming activities as well, and news and what we're doing. So if people sort of want to hear directly from us about what we're doing and what's coming up in the area, there's that opportunity as well.
Fantastic, thank you. And Amy's popped something in the chat as well, a link to her group, which is great. So I'd like to thank you all for coming, giving up your a little bit of your Monday night to join us tonight to talk about citizen science. I hope that you have found our conversation a little bit interesting, hopefully enlightening, explaining a little bit about what citizen science is all about, and hopefully, like me, you're itching to get outside and do something to help the environment. I've been reading Harry Sadler's book about the Yarra. I don't know whether anyone's heard it, but there's quite a few interesting quotes in there where people are making comments about litter and saying, why doesn't someone do something about that? But there isn't a someone to take care of all of the problems the environment is facing at the moment. So I think we've all got to take the opportunity to make a contribution. It doesn't matter how small the contribution is, but when you put them all together, it makes a huge difference. So yeah, I'd encourage you all to get out there and get involved. And thanks again for coming along tonight. Goodbye to everyone. Thank you so much, Amy, Hansi, Danielle, and Lily for sharing your insights with us. It's been really inspiring. I've really enjoyed it. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. Bye, everyone.